Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing your insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide practical perspectives on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. And before we dive in, I'm thrilled to announce that my latest book, Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with actionable advice for growing a successful law firm. Be sure to grab your copy today. And don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive tips and resources. And if you're enjoying this podcast, we love your reviews. They help us reach more attorneys like you who are striving to build the practice of their dreams. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Hey everyone, I'm really excited to have Jeff Eberhard on today. He is a seasoned attorney with 35 years of litigation experience. And he's been focused on transforming traditional settlement practices. He was a managing attorney of a firm before being the CEO and founder of Resolutn. And we met, I think, earlier this year at the ABA Tech Show, which was in February this year. So that was a little bit earlier in the year. And I was really impressed by his presentation on the Startup Alley, and then I kept bumping into him at Lex for FileBind in Salt Lake City, and then CleoCon in Austin, and I was like, hey, you need to be on my podcast. Let's just talk there. And so Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. Welcome to have you.
Well, thank you, Ruby. I really appreciate the invite, and congratulations on your new book. I can't wait to get my copy, maybe signed by you. No, I'm very excited. I'm very excited to be on your podcast. So thank you.
Well, before we talk a little bit more about Resolutn, let's go back a little bit about your law career, because, we have a lot of law firm owners, managing attorneys, and you were in that managing attorney role and helped. So tell us a little bit more about your legal career and leading up to Resolutn, and maybe some insights and wisdom you could share with us.
Yeah, I love talking about that. So let's do it. So I started practicing law in 1987. I graduated from law school. So back then, I just felt lucky to get a job. The market wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. And started practicing with a 2-attorney firm and stayed there for a year. It was a transactional firm, and I didn't really like transactions. I had a little bit of litigation and really enjoyed litigation. The competitiveness, the winning to it, really struck something with me. So I moved to another firm, and another massive 2-attorney firm, and I was a 3rd attorney. And it specialized on litigation, and I just really found a home and something that excited me, because in litigation you can learn, deep dive in so many different things every day, because it's a new case, you learn new things. And I was happy doing that. I really enjoyed it. In fact, I think there's nothing higher than advocating on behalf of your clients. And about 12 years into it, in December of 1999, there were some changes in the firm. We were a quote-unquote full-service firm, and we're going to specialize just in litigation, and no longer we're going to be full service. And so that managing partner that was doing the business law was going to be leaving, and someone had to step up and become managing partner. And I don't know if it's a story that I stepped up or everyone else stepped back, but I became managing partner right before Y2K.
Oh, I was about to say, that was the night I remember we had our little batteries and our water bottles, and we were hoping we were going to survive the next day.
Yeah. And so it just, it kind of happened, and we survived Y2K. And I guess what I'm most proud of is when, so I learned, and I'll talk about this maybe in a bit, but I learned a lot from other folks, including books such as yours, of how to run a firm. And I'm proud that when we got to the 2008 recession, we literally went from 30 lawyers in 2007 to 40 lawyers in 2008, 50, and then the next year from 50 to 60 lawyers. So in the worst economic times, we're able to grow, mostly because we focused on improving ourselves as lawyers in the art what we do, and then improving client service. And I like to say there was a more magical component than that, but that was it. It was just those two things. being better lawyers and being conscious, probably early on in some regard, to how important client service is to keeping and growing your client base. So I continued on that path, continued being managing partner up until December of 2022. Yeah, December of 2022, and then I went off counsel. I've been managing partner for 23 years, practiced for 35 years, and just decided I needed to take a complete and total break from that, other than being a slight resource on occasion when there was a business issue, but no longer practicing law and no longer managing the firm or anything like that. So it was a real trajectory and extremely satisfying when you watch the people grow in their careers, learn, become better lawyers. So I really enjoyed all of that, but it definitely, a lot of lessons there along the way,
One thing, when you were a managing attorney, well, what percentage did you actually practice? Where did you practice, or like where was your like day-to-day life like?
It changed over those 20 plus years. Initially it was probably 80% practice, 20% managing, kind of insourcing to other folks in the firm a lot of things. As we grew, and just maybe when I started, we were a dozen attorneys. As we grew, it changed definitely to 50-50. And then towards the end, it was like 80-20, 80% managing, 20% practicing, simply because I was tired. That's why I retired when I did. I was burnt out on, I knew before someone walked in the office what the solution should be, right? But that's not enough. Okay, that's not enough, because they have to also accept that solution. They have to believe it's their solution. And so I spent a lot of time improving my techniques as a manager. And one simple technique I always would use is I would ask them, well, what do you think we should do? And if they said, well, I don't know, I said, well, come back when you know. And they come back and they tell me what their solution is. And, because we had really great people, 9.5 times out of 10, they were right. But when it's their solution, they'll go do it. If I'm the one telling them to do it, the odds are they're going to well, I don't know if I really agree with that.
So, yeah, they have to buy in. Wow. Well, it almost sounds like you were Yoda. You're like, you just stood there like a wise person and just told them what they needed to hear, so they felt like they were getting the decision themselves.
Well, and they were, because sometimes their decision was better than what I would have done. So it may have been like, partially what I've done, but like, wow, that's even better than I had thought of. So, I mean, when you empower people, it's nice to see what they'll come up with. So that's where it kind of goes back to.
Yeah, I think that so much of growth is about management and delegation and growing as a manager. And it takes time and making mistakes and having other people to learn from. And like what you just said, I mean, that's a good gold nugget for those listening. And you don't get there just immediately, or especially feeling comfortable in imparting that power to people such like that. But when you already can sort of see the future of where things are going and how that important that is. No, that's great. I really do enjoy asking people these types of questions, because I've been managing for 15 years. So I don't know if that means I get to quit in 8 years. I don't know, but and go do something else. No, but I do know what you mean. Like, and also the percentage of the practicing law, like right before I was telling you, I went to like a 5 or 6 long hour asylum interview. But luckily I was able to do some work while I was in the interview, taking notes and everything. But it's still, I think I sort of justify me doing some of the legal work as like, well, I still need to stay in touch with what's going on as I manage, and it helps me. But so anyway, well, you're like, oh, okay, I'm sort of retiring from this practicing thing. What else should I do? So what did you decide to do after that, or how did you get to Resolutn?
Well, it's kind of funny. It was one of those things where after practicing for so long and handling a lot of cases, going to trial in some, but obviously most cases settle, unless there's a really big liability dispute or a big difference on numbers. And then the ones that really merit going to trial are big cases. So, I handled a lot of big cases in my career, but also handled some medium and smaller ones. And it was a sense of frustration on everyone's side in the medium to small case. It's like, why can't we cut to the chase quicker? Why do we got to go through depositions and discovery and then go to a mediation or do it on the phone or through email? The settlement process, it seems incredibly inefficient. I mean, over time, everything's become more efficient. And really, it was part of doing a strategic plan for the firm. And immediately I kind of came up with this idea, but it's like, this isn't for the firm. This would be something totally separate, because it's like a mediation. It's like me going instead of, I mean, frankly, I could have become a mediator after 35 years of practice, but why not create something that's like digital mediation? So it takes place on the computer when you're available, not when the mediator's available, not when you got to schedule a day out of your calendar. You got to spend a week preparing for it, the briefs and so on, the evidence gathering and so on. So why not have a system that allows parties to get real much sooner in the life cycle of a case to their mutual benefit? And that was the genesis of it. And then from there, of course, like everything in life, it's harder than the initial idea. Execution's extremely hard. But the idea was, I won't say simple, but when we pondered it, it was simple. And then the execution became, of course, a long process.
Yeah. Well, so for those, just like really in a nutshell, how does resolution work?
Yeah. So the crux is that today, everyone is waiting on a deadline, before they do anything. There's two parts that slow down the settlement case. This is the ones we tried to fix. Is first, I'm only going to work on cases if I got to go to court next week, if I've got a mediation. If there's some impending doom, then I'll work on it. And so that's the first problem is cases kind of sit waiting for that big thing. The second part is settlement today. I hate to call it a game because these are clients' lives, but it's like when you buy a car. When you go and spend 5 hours negotiating for the price of a car. Yeah. Especially 20, 30 years ago, before the internet was able to help you laser in on a correct price. Yeah. You had to go in for like 5 hours, 6 hours and negotiate to get to a price. And that's because everyone's playing settlement games, going back and talking to the manager, that whole thing we've always been through. Yeah. And today you can get on the computer and find out, oh, this car is going for less than MSRP, or it's going above for whatever reason. So in settling cases, it's a real game of like, oh, I won the negotiation because I think I got $5,000 more than they were really, really willing to pay, or I was really, really willing to settle for. And the other side could be thinking the exact same thing. I would have paid even $5 more. So it's a whole game of like, you're winning the negotiation, getting a little bit more than you think you could have gotten, or paying less than you think you had to. What we try to do is flip the whole game on a different axis, saying, well, what if you settle that 6 months before? How much savings would there have been because your staff didn't have to deal with that for 6 months? You didn't have a lot of lawyer time in there for 6 more months. On the plaintiff side, looking at that and saying, if we could get this case settled sooner, how much more efficient are you? Could you handle more cases? Will you be more profitable? And I think clearly you would be more profitable because you have less time in that file if you're doing a contingency. And so when I meet with like plaintiffs attorneys at a conference, and kind of walk through and talk about this and show them maybe a little bit of the platform, within 90 seconds, they're like, wow, this would transform my practice. And then like we all do as lawyers, we start thinking and overthinking it and go, well, but if it's so good for me, why are they going to do it over there? Why is an insurance company going to use it? And I've been to insurance conferences, and it's a very similar thing. Like, okay, you've got like 150, 200 pending, and how do you get through all those? Well, it's hard. And it says, what if there is a piece of software that did X, Y, and Z? that allows you to get to your number much faster, to expose your number much faster to a neutral, and try to get the case done much faster so that you don't have all that sitting on your desk and you look better in your performance reviews. They're like, that's great. That'd be great. But how am I going to get the plaintiff's attorneys to use them? And so both sides inherently see the benefit to it and are excited by the benefits of it, but they have this lingering distrust because they are adverse on a lot of things. So I think that's kind of, the process that was going through and building this and explaining it to folks is it's something totally new to what exists out there in the world. And so it's kind of like explaining the Apple iPod to someone that's never saw an Apple iPod. It's like, this is new and it's amazing. It'll transform your life, but you have to see it to believe it. You have to experience it to believe it.
I really like your example about the car and the haggling in the number, because 12 years ago, I'm still in the same car from 12 years ago, but we had flown back from Dubai and my husband had negotiated online the price, and I was like pregnant, I had a toddler, and I just like walked in and like signed stuff and paid, and boom, and he had done all of it like online from Dubai, and it was so nice, because as
Right.
opposed to like, because I'd gone beforehand with my sister one time, and like there was all these add-ons and then this and that, and like they really wear you down.
Right.
And then before you're just, I just want to leave this place, and then eat and get it over with. But there's all those games, right? And I get it now. I see what you're saying. If someone's never really done this before, it's just like you have to prioritize the human. It's to focus on what has a deadline and what's coming up sooner, and something doesn't have a deadline. And so then that's how you have to prioritize things. And if things are out into the future or don't have a deadline, then you're going to keep postponing them. But I like how you're talking about like saving the firm time. So then how does the double blind bidding work? Like how do you get people to participate in getting to a faster, effective settlement?
Yeah, so that's kind of a two-part question. I'll try and hit both. So first, what we are is a neutral third party. So I want to make that very clear, is we're like a mediator. And so we provide workflow tool or interface, whatever you want to call it, dashboard in simple terms, of the status of all your cases, including looking at how long it's been on resolution, and then notifying you both on the softwares or by email that it's your turn to make a demand. So if you're thinking like, it's very much modern after my experience, modeled after my experience of attending hundreds of mediations. What it's like to be in a mediation in a mediator's room. You're sitting there twiddling your thumbs while you're waiting for the mediator to come back and tell you the next number. And so we have a nice way that you can see that. And instead of sitting in an office, you're sitting in your office. Instead of sitting on a Zoom call, you're just looking at a computer dashboard. And so it makes it very clear when you need to move and what cases you need to move. And for a plaintiff's attorney, what cases can be closed and turned into money, which means profit for you and a happy client that's going to leave you a good review online. And for the insurance company, they have the same tool we give them, which gives them the ability to close their files faster and make them a happy employee, not frustrated with their workflow. The double blind part is we do two things. We telegraph at the beginning of the case, and in the dashboard you can see there's going to be 4 rounds. We'll go back to our car example, our mediation example. Research shows it takes 3 to 5 rounds to settle a case, back and forth. Everyone has to feel they got something in order to walk away. Because if you made initial demand of X dollars and it settled the case, you're kicking yourself all the way home. Like, yeah, I could have got a lot more. Okay. and even then, there's something called anchoring. Like you maybe go way too high, and that takes someone off because you were way too high, or vice versa. So there's a lot of components that happen when you're presented with a number. The double blind, the crux of it is we do it in 2 ways. First, both sides have to enter their number into the system before the other side's number is shown on the very first round and only the first round. So let's pick a simple case. Maybe it has a a rough value of say $50,000, maybe the plaintiff's attorney adds in 120,000 demand because they know I'm going to start out here if I think my case is worth 50, and the insurance company maybe they start at 15 or something like that. So those are entered in and disclosed to both sides at the same time. That way, no one goes first. But after that, everything is double blind. And what that means, and I'll go back to the mediation example, it's like you're telling the mediator on the next round, I was at 120, but I'm going to go down to 95 now. Now, there's a couple things that happen. The system actually recommends a number to each side to move, much like a mediator's number in a mediation where the mediator walked in and typically today would say, they're at this number, what do you want to do? And they always want to feel out the judge or mediator and say, well, what should we do? We kind of give a suggestion, but just like in a mediation, you have all the power to put in whatever number you want. And so this digital mediator goes back and forth and pushes each side towards a middle number, but no one knows what the opposing side is giving authority to the resolution system. So if you both get to the fourth round and it doesn't happen, there's no settlement, the only number that was disclosed in my example is 120,000 and 15,000. So if you got down to like 50,000 and didn't settle the case, an insurance company got up to 45,000 and it didn't settle the case, neither side knows that. And so then you can go back and litigate and take some more time and perhaps find some more facts out and see what happens. Of course, most cases settle, but this allows you not to be anchored to that number, that last number you submitted to the opposing side. Because today, you're always constantly second guessing your number. Was I too aggressive when I ticked them off and derailed negotiations and we're going to fight for 3 months? Or was I too generous? And as a result, I'm not getting as good a deal with my client as I could have gotten if I had done that. And so you're able to toggle in the system, and until the numbers meet or overlap, that's when the settlement occurs. The system recognizes it and tells both sides you have a settlement. So that's a quickie overview of double-blind mediation. It's kind of like double-blind when they do double-blind studies. You got a placebo and you got the medicine, and it's tested in that regard that it has more validity than all the conscious biases and unconscious biases that go into the presentation of the offer and the negotiation that don't really affect the value of the case, but affect that negotiation. And the younger generation really loves tech, so it plays into that a ton.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by administrative, marketing, or other legal tasks? Well, you're not alone. Many lawyers are in the same boat. They're trying to build up their firm, and they're trying to figure out how to get help to do so. So that's where Staffy comes in. So over 90 law firm owners, just like you, have turned to Staffy for help with their legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work. Staffy's mission is to help lawyers find balance while growing their firm with bilingual virtual staff and full HR support. And they take the hassle out of the team management and focus on what matters most, your clients and your practice. I've personally benefited from multiple staff support with about 8 virtual assistants over the last few years with my 2 businesses, including my law firm, Powered Law Group. Now schedule a free consultation with Staffy. It's stafi.cc, and you can use the code RUBY, that's RUBY, for a $500 off coupon. I don't do this type of law at all. So I'm like channeling my inner suit, whatever I guess.
Right.
But I guess I'm trying to grasp the things that make sense. Like I do have like clients, there's certain, as an immigration attorney, I have certain nationalities that like to haggle or negotiate more than others. And I don't want to play that game. I'm just like, these are my fees. But sometimes I wonder if I should just have higher fees for certain clients and negotiate down to what my normal fees are, just so they feel better about themselves. But anyway, I don't want to play that game. But
right. Well, I think this is recommending on practicing law, managing law. Sometimes you have to tell clients no, that you won't take their case. I'm not saying you should based upon that, but if it's a bad case, then clearly you shouldn't take it. But or a hard-paying client that doesn't want to pay you, that's a real issue. So, I mean, that's a respectable thing in a different vein than what you're mentioning, but that is part of managing the firm.
So, like, if someone were to use Resolutn, like, how would that go about? Like, you're like, hey, let's all use Resolutn and let's get it solved in a couple months, or like a couple. Like, is there a time limit, or like you have to say, hey, go use it, because otherwise it's not going to work. Like, all the parties have to be in agreement. Like, practically, how do you get people to set up?
Great question. Thanks for asking it. So, I mean, the first thing is on our website, there's a button you can click called Join Now. And what that does immediately is gives you access to the dashboard. And it's 2 simple screens in order to start a matter. So first, when you join now, you get some videos, assuming you're a plaintiff's attorney or a lawyer. We don't work with unrepresented parties, not that. So it has to be a law firm.
Okay.
We are integrated into software like Clio, Smokeball, Filevine, and soon to be others. But you need to, agree to the agreement that you're, just like everything in life, you're going to play by these terms. And we have a set of videos that explains how to use it, so you don't have to do the dreaded demo. And also, there's no long software. So everything today is like, let me do a demo and sign you up for a year, and it's embedded in your system and you can't get rid of it. It's a very difficult process with software. This is on a per matter basis. So it's no long software term, and we charge on a per settlement basis. And we only charge if there's a settlement. So think of mediation. I mean, you can attend a mediation, you can spend, between the 2 parties, $5,000, $10,000 for a day in mediation. But, you may not get a settlement, and the related costs of preparing are pretty massive. The time, whether it be by the hour or just your value, your time, if you're doing a contingency, is pretty massive. And so that way it makes it something where we're charging a part of the settlement. If there's a settlement, we charge 2% of the settlement amount, capped at $500 per party. So going back to, so that way we're tied to your success. We really want that, and I think that's important. So the key part is, once you're admitted as an attorney on the platform or an insurance adjuster, we deliver a set of videos explaining how to use the system so you don't have to interact with anyone. And once you upload a claim, which takes like filling out 10 fields, like your client's name and a couple other little things, similar videos are delivered to the other side explaining why this neutral third party is something you've chosen to help settle the case. And so they can go, oh, I get the benefit of that. Yes, let's rock and roll. Let's get it done. And then the system gently prods you along the way to move from first round to second round to third round and final and fourth round of negotiation through some gentle gamification. It was something I wanted to build in there and thought would be really cool. Everyone loves video games. Everyone hates software, office software. Why not have a little bit of that come in? And it's just a touch, but a little bit to kind of keep people looking back at it and looking to see if they can get a milestone reward for responding quickly, for example.
That's sort of funny because at ABA Tech Show, I spoke on a panel about gamification, and I read UK Chow's Actionable Gamification. I think it's a lot of fun to put those in. I've been noticing that too, in a lot more like software and programs, or even in school, SKOOL, or in LinkedIn, or like there's a lot of it everywhere. We just sort of don't realize what it is. But that's smart.
If it's done well, you don't notice it.
Yeah, good point.
And I think again it goes back to that shouldn't be the focus of the system, but we don't win, i.e. make a fee, unless everyone that's on the platform wins by settling their case more timely and efficiently. And so having something on there that recognizes that you are, say, responding to an offer within a day does a couple of things. It delivers on our promise of settling cases more efficiently, but it also, one of the cool things we have an opportunity to, since it's double blind, is the numbers could line up directly, like 50,000 post submits. But if one They say the insurance company submits $51,000 and the attorney submits $49,000. There's $2,000 of what we call overlap, and that could be split down the middle, or maybe 60% of it goes to the side that has done a little more active things to get the case settled. Not much, but just a little bit. And so that's where taking positive actions towards settlement can have a little bit of pay. It's still less than what the carrier is willing to pay, and it's still more than what you're willing to take. But instead of splitting it right down the middle, this is a slight way to let us encourage good behavior and proactive action on the platform.
So I'm reading the Future of Professions by Richard Susskind and his son, the other Susskind. And I should have that name up. But, I've listened to a podcast by Richard Susskind and it made me think about resolution, about just like how we could use technology to get to justice sooner, and like the whole justice delayed, justice denied. And just this whole idea, like, could we be using AI or technology to get settlement or decisions within courts and all these places that have backlogs and like right. Also these settlements, like, then that means you're not clogging litigation. And right. Sort of like, I don't know if it's around the whole country, but like in Harris County where I'm at, the family law judge is like, you go to mediation before you come see me, that type of thing. And like to be more efficient, judicial efficiency and things like that. So you're living it, but like, what do you think about in that space of like using technology and creating more access to justice or efficiency?
Oh, for sure. I think lawyers, partly because they're so busy, they don't want to slow down to learn new technology. And, that's why when I created this, the whole goal was to have it something being very user-friendly. And so when you look at the interface, it's very user-friendly, and you don't even need an owner's manual to do it. You just can go.
That's tight.
But looking forward, I agree with you, is that there's so many opportunities to try and resolve things much sooner. And really it goes back to kind of like Westlaw was introduced. When I went to law school, we went in the library from book to book to book. Okay, There wasn't a computer to do that. And then that was introduced. That didn't make us less lawyers. That made us better lawyers. And so now the question is technology in general, in particular, resolution technology, is it going to make us, better lawyers? Yeah, because we're going to be working on the better cases. I like to say, whether it be things you're used to or things that are smaller cases, maybe $50,000, $75,000 cases that aren't big, but are, even a $5,000 or $10,000 case. If you're the client in that case, it's a big case to you. Your life has been impacted. If you're living paycheck to paycheck, your life is being impacted because you were rear-ended at a stop sign, for example. So anything that can speed that up and help that client is important. And I think as we get forward and looking in the next 5 or 10 years, as technology can help lawyers and insurance companies, and the next generation is everybody. I think my large vision is, why not use technology to help smooth the interactions of landlord-tenant? Why do they have to write these nasty letters, and then that gets the landlord to take some action if it could be written in a way that actually help mold it to explain the trouble they're having as a tenant, and then the landlord like, oh, I can help do that. There's a lot of areas where we can improve it. Today, so much tech in legal is focused on, I'll call it conflict tech. And these are great companies, and I think lawyers should take advantage of them. I'm not saying they should, but there's a great company called Even Up and these other companies that are doing demand generation letters. I think they're very valuable because they make a better demand letter. They get all the information the carrier needs, and it gets it sent to the carrier. And that's really important, but you're just prolonging the demand. You're prolonging the life cycle of conflict. And so the more technology, whether it be us or someone else, that is actually looking to how to resolve these more efficiently, that, I don't want to say it's leading to world peace, but come on, it's a little more peaceful world. If we can agree on a certain number of things, let's say you got 100 cases, and 60 or 70 of them you can resolve much faster. That makes your life as a lawyer. We're going to talk a bit about, I'm sure, the emotions of being a lawyer, the difficulty it is of practicing law. That makes your life a little easier, and maybe makes you a little more profitable, or would make you a little more profitable too. So on both sides of the fence, it helps each, if we're looking to some peace technology, that brings peace to both sides, not in the whole, everything they do. I mean, courts are important, juries are important, judges are important, mediators are important. Not every case can be done this way, but there's a lot that can. There's a lot that can.
Yeah. And, sort of thinking about you're talking about like going to the library and going book to book. Like, I think there's this whole thought that like, oh, if we have AI doing all this stuff, then we're not going to, well, I don't know, like, what are we still needed for? Or like, we'll have all this extra time, or like, but you know what? I've had this conversation a lot with people. It's like, we just fill the time with more things, and we find other ways to help our clients or to be better lawyers or something. Like, it's just sort of just a different way of doing the same thing necessarily. But I think it's good to reevaluate how we can be more efficient. And it sounds like a perfect equation of you having so much experience in that space, and then being tech minded, and then finding a solution that could help others on a larger scale, and not just like one-off settlements, but like many people, the many cases. Well, I've got some rapid fire questions for you. If you got some answers. So what is your favorite board game or game? Because you mentioned gamification, so you probably like board games. Anyway, and why?
Yeah. There's a game called Codenames. Have you ever heard of Codenames?
I don't know. Tell me more.
So it's a game, and I got 3 adult daughters, and they have significant others. So it's a family game, and that's probably why I like it more than perhaps some other ones that are more traditional. We're able to get together. We just did it over the holidays. You lay out, like, I think it's 20 cards on a table, and 2 people give clues, and then the rest of the team, you're divided in 2, has to guess what names on the board correspond to your clue. And the cool part is you can only give one word clue, and there may be 7 cards, 8 cards that are yours you're trying to guess. The other team is trying to guess about 8 cards on the table, and there's like one that's literally the 8 ball, that if you guess that one, you lose automatically. And so you have to be concise and giving your clue, and then you also want to try and say this relates to like 3 unrelated words. Somehow this word relates to 3 or 4 unrelated words, and then they get a guess. And the thing that's why it's fun is because, again, I'm playing with my wife and my kids and my son-in-laws, and it just is like this thing where everyone wants to give more clues when they're standing there. At one point we had to grab a sheet and still they weren't like staring eyeball at it or smiling and they said the right one. So it's just a real fun game because it's a good family game, especially with more adult children. Like, not that it's an adult game, but it's just not someone that, I don't know what age it is, probably over teenage or 13 or something like that, I would imagine, but maybe not. Maybe it's even younger than that. But it's just a fun family game to get together over the holidays or any occasion and, see who cheats more. No, really, just to see who wins. It's always close. It's always close. We really enjoy that game. Codenames.
Okay, well, that's the first one on our podcast. You mentioned that one. I'll definitely check it out. Thanks for sharing. So what would you say is your superpower and why?
Yeah, so I'll give a quick backstory, then I'll tell you what it is. There was a mentor of mine, and it was really reassuring when he told me this about trying cases to a jury. He says, you never want to tell a jury, this is a complex case. It's going to be hard to follow. So pay attention over the next 4 weeks as we talk about this trial. You never want to do that because they're going to tune out. What you want to do with a jury is you want to say, this case has got a lot of facts, but don't worry. I want to make it simple for you. And they're like, oh, great. And so whether there be because of that or I latched onto it because that's my approach, My superpower is making the complex simple.
Yeah, that's
Short, that's it.
That's a good one. We've heard that a few times on the podcast, and I think that might be just a good one that lawyers have to have. Like, not all of them do, but
Right.
but making it easy to digest for the adjudicator or for the client, and so true. And it's hard. Like, even my silent client today, I was like, you have a lot that happened to you. Imagine a film. It's an hour and a half or 2 hours because of attention span. You've got to go on the highlights, and that's all the officer can handle. We can't talk about extemporaneous, random things that just don't have to do with what we're talking about. But that's good advice. I love that. Good nuggets of wisdom. Okay. So last two quick questions.
Sure.
What is a habit that you have that's helped make you more successful?
I know there's a habit. You tell me if it qualifies, but a lifelong learner.
I think you can call that a habit. Yeah.
So whether it be being a better litigator, finding things to do that, whether it be a better trial attorney, finding that. Similar, managing partner, finding resources. Could be in person, which I think is very valuable, or books. But just, I went to law school and I thought I was all done. Lo and behold, I found out that wasn't true. I actually ended up getting a master's degree in law firm management back in
Really?
07, 08. Yeah. And so I think just that ability, and that's why I think books are great. I think you got to flavor that with some in-person experiences, because those connections you can make, and having someone that's been there and done that and having that interaction is great too. So that's why I love going to conferences too. But if we were doing this from my house, you'd just see a big bookshelf right behind me, because I just totally believe in lifelong learning and enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, actually, that goes into my next question. What's a favorite book or one you're reading or a podcast, something that you're like, I have to share this with other people?
All right, I got to give you two because they relate to where I live to some extent. Shoe Dog, the book about Nike, Phil Knight. It's an amazing book. So Shoe Dog, it takes from the beginning of Phil Knight's story at University of Oregon, or even before that, but he went to U of O, University of Oregon, and then taught for a brief time at Portland State. But his whole beginnings of how he started Nike, and it ends, I think, more or less on the IPO, something on that. But the beginnings of that startup story is incredibly, you're blown away how hard he worked to make that a success, and how everything was lined up against him, but he made it work. And so it's a great book. I mean, it's just a top book, and anyone that cares about business, because I love business books like yours, but I also love business stories about founders and hearing what they went through. And you see them today, like Nike, like, oh my God, it's such a successful company, like it's always been like that. No, it wasn't. The second one is less obvious, because everyone knows about Nike and Oregon and like the Oregon Ducks and so on, is, at least most people do, but the book about Steve Jobs, that book, and it, I thought it was incredible too, because it takes obviously the start of his company and really focuses and spends a massive amount of time on the startup of his company. But the Oregon connection is he went to a school at Reed College in Portland, Oregon, for one term, and then he audited classes because he didn't want to waste money on tuition. But the really fun part is he then spent a bunch of time at a commune type of place located in Oregon, not far from where I live.
Place, like, did it have apples or orchard or something?
Yeah.
And then that's where you got the word apple from.
Yeah. It's an incredible story about him. And I think because it's also an honest story, it's not like this retelling is done by some PR person. It's a real raw telling of his life, and sometimes it's not complimentary about it, but just tells how hard it was for him to start, and how he trudged through, and how his standards were incredible. Have you read it too?
The Walter Isaacson one. Yeah, I still have 18 more hours left, but I've been, I went to Burn Book and I've been doing another one, and then I'm going to circle back. But I've gotten into these biographies as well for the same reason, just to sort of, I've read so many business books and I sort of had to diversify the genre, but it's really, it's business and humanity, and, you see what they go through. So, I've been enjoying it. And also being a lot in the legal tech space as well, just like to think the way things were. Like, actually what would happen was I listened to the Elon Musk one, the Burn Book, and the Steve Jobs, and I was realizing they were all referencing each other at different points. I felt like I was doing some type of like jumping around from different, universes into each other's stories. But good. That's a good recommendation. Well, Jeff, we've walked through a little bit about your management, some good nuggets of what you've shared with us, and then settlement and efficiencies and leveraging tech, and really just giving us inspiration of like how the law can evolve, leveraging technology and creating a better experience for our clients, ourselves as lawyers, and a lot of good advice. And I'll definitely have to check out the Nike book and the code names. How, any other last thought, and how can people stay in touch with you and find you?
Last thoughts, I guess, is for lawyers to be open to technology. I think, I'll give one last tool to folks. If they have not gotten to, 6 months ago at a legal conference, a national speaker was speaking at a local conference and gave something about perplexity. I don't know if you've gotten perplexity yet, but they call it the Google killer because it gives you the answer, especially if you go with their pro version, which is a little longer. So it's a tool that I found incredible at that time. That gives you kind of a white paper answer with footnotes, so it's not ChatGPT. And it's just been a real great tool for me. Anytime I have an issue or a question, instead of Googling it, I use that. So I think anytime there's technology, it doesn't have to be so invasive, like it's practicing law for me, but it's like if I could use this piece of technology to answer a quick question. And if you're a lawyer trying to use a computer, maybe it's asking it how to find something on your computer or some other simple task at home. I think the more you start to use technology a little bit on not the important crazy stuff like going to trial, but on little things in your life, and you're like, wow, this is pretty cool. I wonder what else I can use. And that starts getting you on this process like, well, I would never use AI, but now I'm using it in Perplexity. Now I'm using it on this. It's like, well, maybe I could use a little more technology. And so you have to start dipping your toe in. And I think that's a good place for people to start, because they can use that at home on home questions they have, or at work on little questions of how to use something better. There's just a lot of ways I think folks need to, use the technology that is approachable and available, as opposed to the big decisions like, oh my gosh, I need to buy a whole new matter management system, and that's like a 2-year process and a 5-year contract. And that's why I think we have our system built as a very simple, one case agreement, so that it's easy to dip your toe in and not have to turn everything in the world to you. So I think, the more you can dip your toe into technology and understand it, the better you're going to be in the long term, and probably even in the short term as well.
Well, and should they reach you via LinkedIn or email or your website?
Sure. LinkedIn's great. I'm on LinkedIn. And then if they want to email me, it's Jeff, Jeff, at Resolutn, spelled slightly differently. We couldn't get all the letters, but at Resolutn.com. That'd be great.
And that's RESOLUTN.com.
Correct.
Right. Well, thanks so much, Jeff. I'm glad we got to have this chance to talk and learned a lot. I'll have to take some, make those notes and put them into practice. I like the one about what do you think the solution is? I'm definitely going to use that with my kids too.
Now that's an interesting concept. Let me know how that goes.
I'll go back with you. They're 11 and 13. So,
Right. Well, you still learned something. You mean you learned they want to make a bad decision? It's just as valuable as knowing they want to make a good decision.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. You can definitely check out my book on Amazon, Power Up Your Practice, and also our Facebook group, keeping the conversation going between week to week's episode, Power Up Your Practice on Facebook. And we've got some other cool things coming up in 2025. I can't believe it's just around the corner, but stay tuned with us and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management Podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave us a review, tell someone else about us, and I would love to get this podcast shared with others to reach more listeners like you. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for exclusive content, tips, and updates straight to your inbox. And exciting news, our book, The Power Up Your Practice, is out and available on Amazon. It's packed with strategies, 25 chapters, to help you elevate your practice and achieve your goals. So join us next week as we dive into more advice and insight on law practice management. We'll see you next time.